The Holdovers is the best new Christmas anything in decades.
That's a bold statement.
For 2 hours and 13 minutes, I was either holding back tears or laughing hysterically.
It was pretty great. I'm here to, I saw this movie with Cam. Cam's, as he does, he's developed lots of thoughts. I'm here to listen and agree or disagree and comment upon as we go.
This movie, achingly human and vulnerable. So well made. And I can't shake it because it recalls some of the most perfect theater experiences I've ever had.
Ooh,
namely, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which I'll never forget the feeling I had in the theater when the lights came up, because that movie felt so complete. Not only that I got the whole story, that an entire world was crushed into one 2-hour and change movie, but that I felt like I got in touch with the entire human experience.
Yes,
Every emotion, every feeling, so many character arcs and feelings and crying and laughing, all of it. I think that was one of the most complete stories I've ever seen.
Well, and in that, there's such a range of characters. And so you get sort of this full range of the human experience. And that's what this movie had, too.
Yes, and it's sort of the highest compliment I can give it. But I want to zoom in on 2 huge parts for this movie. One is the humor and one is the setting. Would you like to choose which one we start with?
Let's start with the setting. I think that makes the most sense.
This movie creates such a beautiful, timeless world. And it reminds me of one of my favorite movies of all time, a movie that changed my life, Dead Poets Society.
Of course. So indebted to Dead Poets Society. Doing its own thing for sure. But I remember when we saw the trailer, we were like, this feels a little bit like Dead Poets Society. And I had no idea how truly in the spirit of that movie this one was also going to be.
The New England
boarding school.
The film grain. I mean, it's so developed to look like a 70s movie.
Right, and it takes place in the 70s.
Right, but even the way it's made, the way it's conceived and structured, I've read some things about the movie where they talked about adding in the film grain and the texture to make it look like an older movie. But it goes much, it's not just like a skin deep approach. It's the softness of the lighting. It's the texture of this school and using all of these real sets and real locations.
And the sound, like you can tell they're in these old creaky buildings that echo because it's all wood, you know?
The credits at the beginning being those old school aesthetics. But it's down to the writing, which is the kind of soul of every movie. The way it's paced. It's got this patience and maturity.
But it's not slow like, it was dragging along. It was patient.
It's got more in common with It's a Wonderful Life than it does any other movie in 2023.
Sure.
And I don't mean that approach to Christmas. I mean that approach to storytelling.
Yeah, and humanity.
And the completeness and complexity of that story.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, even like from the beginning, it takes you a good 10-15 minutes for like the dialogue to even begin, like, and for the story to really get going, because it's taking its time with these establishing shots of the school, of the town, of the inside of the school, of
people moving
Paul
through
Giamatti's
this
like
world.
desk. Yeah, exactly.
I wanna bring in a little tweet here because I've got a lot of Martin McDonagh on the mind. This is just one of those sort of movies. And
he did 3 Billboards, if y'all don't know.
Right, and he also did Banshees of Inisherin, and this reminds me of the episode we did for that movie.
Oh yeah,
because that was a work of art that touched me and changed my life. And I think 3 Billboards did that as well. And I'm getting the sense that The Holdovers has had that same effect on me. And I was trying to articulate what from Banshees I felt during The Holdovers.
Okay.
And I ran across this tweet from a horror writer on Twitter who's named Lauren Lee Smith, and I wanted to read out the tweet because I think it captures some of that feeling of what I got from The Holdovers. The tweet is, "I love how old books are not constrained by modern publishing rules like getting to inciting events quickly or using every scene to move a plot forward. Last night I read 4 pages about a guy standing in a freezing sheep field at midnight, watching the stars, and perhaps a modern editor would have called it rambling or unnecessary, cut this, cut that. Except this morning I woke up thinking about that field and its beauty, as though I stood there myself last night while I slept, spying on Thomas Hardy's Farmer Oak through time, and all I did was read it."
I love that.
And so much of The Holdovers, and it's not that the movie has these long rambling, to use that word. It's not like it has these long tangents from the main story. I think pretty much everything's essential and accomplishing something for the narrative, but it's the way you set the table. It's the way you see these characters in these moments that feel like those little in-between moments where someone says something that you never forget.
Yeah.
The way they sit on the couch watching TV and kind of talking in between the ads.
Yeah.
And being nice to each other, but those little insights and probes into those deeper interior lives they have, the little hints you get of complexity. So much of the movie is those beautiful moments that you remember from other movies. 10 years later when everything else is flaked away, but there's one little moment that you hold on to. The Holdovers is 2 hours of those moments.
Yeah, I think you're so right.
It's like a really well edited greatest hits of a real period of time.
Definitely. And the colors in this movie too, I think help with that, like that pacing and that setting establishment, right? Because they're very light, and I mean, it's not like bright light, bright happy, because it's a lot of whites and like tans and like the wood of the school, but of course there's the Christmas colors in there too. But it's just, I don't know, the level of saturation feels open and inviting, but also a little bit sad and lonely at the same time, which is how the whole movie feels. The colors are really beautiful. Because
there is a haunted quality here where you're dealing with, I guess we should have done this earlier, you're dealing with a teacher who has to stay over the winter break with the students who don't have somewhere to go home to for Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's the whole setup of the movie.
Yeah.
So you follow a couple students and this one teacher who gets stuck with this shitty job, and the woman who has to feed them and take care of them.
Yeah, she runs the kitchen because it's 1970 and men can't cook.
Sure.
Yeah.
But following a space, a huge, sprawling, rich, gorgeous private school without anyone there, like there is an emptiness and a hollowness to all of these cavernous, wooden, arch, marbled, beautiful spaces.
Echoey.
They're empty.
Right. And like this weird, like, there's like this feeling of like you need to fill the space, you need to reach these achievements that people of the past have, right?
It's intimidating.
And that's what a lot of these kids are dealing with, is like pressure from their parents and pressure from the teachers.
So there's a thoughtfulness and a reserved quality to the way it's all set up. But it's so thoughtful within that space. It's not just about that void.
Right, because it's also so inviting because of, and this can lead nicely into the humor discussion, right? But like the tone of this movie, it's serious, like it's dealing with some serious shit, and we're doing some serious character work. But I don't feel like it's this ominous, like daunting, haunted type of story either, because it's very friendly, and I'm immediately invited to explore and connect with all of these characters.
It does that thing that most dramas do really well, where you set the stage for really good classic drama. So you have a big empty campus, and you have one character at the end of his, sort of career in life, and one character at the beginning of the career in life. And in between them or behind them is this huge void of possibility or regret. And they're equally crushing and overwhelming and intimidating. So that could be the most dour, dry, miserable movie of the year.
Right.
But like The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, 100 other dramas we could rattle off that we love, every moment, like of the moment-to-moment storytelling, is comedic, because I don't want to brush over this. It's maybe the funniest movie released this year.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
While being the most raw and sincere, and genuinely, and I think unflinchingly capturing the pain of holidays, of family, grief, aging, regret, all those other words I just tossed out there.
Fear the future, right.
But for me, to call a work of art about these subjects honest or vulnerable, I think they have to have both of those elements going hand in hand.
Yeah.
And maybe the greatest holiday movie compliment I can give to The Holdovers is that I think it sits right there on the shelf next to my all-time favorites. I'm just going to pick out two for examples.
Okay.
National Lampoon Christmas Vacation.
Yep.
Which I think is the source text of bitter and sincere holiday storytelling.
Totally, yes.
And the other one, which you brought into my life, is The Family Stone. Both of those movies, these stories balance dark comedy and dark truths against very sincere, holiday warmth.
Totally. Yes.
Do you see similarities with that?
Absolutely. I mean, when you were talking about the in-between moments, I was literally thinking about the Family Stone. And so much of that movie is just those weird in-between, like, unimportant interactions you have with your family during the holidays. I mean, anytime, but especially during the holidays when, like, shit comes up, right? When you're all back together. But they end up being so important. And they are so funny. I mean, The Family Stone is one of the funniest movies I've seen. I think it's so funny because, I mean, the casting in that movie is so good, and the way that the whole family dynamics play out, and it feels so like a family either that you know or you're a part of or that you're adjacent to or that you've seen. But it also is full of such like heartbreakingly sincere moments, and that is so how this movie feels. The same with National Lampoon. I mean, obviously National Lampoon's a little bit funnier. It's just more slapstick, right? But yeah, I mean, that like misery of the holidays, that's totally captured in there too.
And I feel like the thing that most holiday, because I'm not talking about the kind of endless dirge of Hallmark movies. I mean, the real,
the actual ones,
kind of ones. I feel like there's a temptation to break up the light stuff and the dark stuff into separate characters.
Yeah.
And what I love so much about National Lampoon and Family Stone is that all of the major players get to play both sides. And I think that is something that maybe The Holdovers does better than any of those movies, because we have three principal leads here. You have the teacher, the student, and the woman taking care of them and keeping it together.
Yes.
And all three of those leads get to play the light and the dark so differently and so beautifully.
Absolutely.
I mean, Divine Joy Randolph, who we talked about in The Idol, thought she was fantastic in The Idol.
She was so good in The Idol.
Has such a yearning, layered performance. The kid is kid, but relative to the other two characters.
He's playing a teenager, yeah.
It's the film debut of the actor Dominic Sessa, who plays the principal student that we're playing with here. And he is so funny.
He is.
And like angry. There's almost a Kramer level physical performance, because there's so much energy and repression and excitement and fear.
And he's an angry kid. He's dealing with a lot.
But you can see everything.
Right.
And he's got this gorgeous asymmetrical face. He's got all these feelings and desires. He doesn't really know what to do with himself. And it's such a telling, communicative performance.
And you said in the car on the way home after we'd seen it, you were like, next to Paul Giamatti, like the ability and the confidence to be that funny alongside Paul Giamatti is incredible. And you're so right.
Because the delivery has this, it has this cadence to it where it's almost twitchy. It's so like brusque and like motor mouth, the way he delivers these lines, that it does take an incredible amount of confidence and like stage presence, for lack of a better word.
But he doesn't come across as like this really quippy adult. He's still this insecure, terrified child.
It's real.
Who is like had to become like funny and quick through his life circumstances, but he stumbles sometimes and he's awkward and he doesn't always land his lines. It's
a buzzing energy.
Yeah.
But yes, to hold your own against Paul Giamatti in your film debut, he's astonishing.
He's so good.
I cannot wait to see what this actor does next.
Me too.
But I do want to take a moment to talk about Paul Giamatti.
Of course.
I'm a long time Paul head. a Giamatti bro.
Okay.
One of the best faces in Hollywood.
Truly.
One of the most telling and interesting. I think just has a fascinating face. But the thing that has always, that has made me ride or die for Paul Giamatti is the voice.
He's got a good voice.
He can put so much texture and intention into every word. It's very Alan Rickman.
Yeah.
Where anything can be a punchline. Yes. Anything can be devastating or light or throwaway. And there's an unbelievable amount of control over every syllable. And I think this is his best performance. And I say that as someone who's followed his career and watched all of Billions, and I've adored him forever.
It's pretty fantastic.
The line readings here are timeless in the same way Family Stone, those classics that you rewatch and you can laugh every time, because he is razor sharp, painful, restrained, hysterical.
And he's doing so much face acting, even with all the shit going on with his face in this movie.
Yes.
It's really, really impressive.
It's crazy because in the dramatic sense, I feel like this is the same kind of turn that people celebrate with Robin Williams doing Good Will Hunting or Dead Poet Society.
Right.
but humor-wise, it's as good as any funny performance you can pull up from any movie.
Right.
Like, he's in this movie, he's Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, but he's also Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting and Dead Poets Society.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those two things shouldn't work together, but there's such an explosive, exciting alchemy in doing those things at the same time. And I think he's probably one of 4 actors alive who could do it.
I think you're right.
It's such an interesting performance.
Right. Yeah. And it's, it's distinct from Robin Williams' character in Dead Poets Society, right? Because that's such a like romantic take on this whole concept of like this teacher having this profound impact on students and changing their lives, like, which is a real thing that exists in the world and is a beautiful thing. But it is this like highly romantic view and take on it. In the Holdovers, this is still sincere. It's got that sincerity of like a holiday movie like you're talking about, but it's a slightly more embittered way of looking at it. And rather than it being about like inspiring this amazing career change and completely like having all of his students 180 their entire lives, it's more like this kid just like needed a friend. I mean, this kid needed a parent. That's what he needs a parent. And that is sort of what Paul Giamatti's character is for him.
The way these 3 characters serve the gaps in the other characters' lives is immaculate.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. And it's really fun the way that Divine Joy Randolph, the way that she fits into their dynamic, because they so could have easily made this like, oh, like let's make these 2 male and female characters fall in love and that's their son, blah blah blah. It's not that at all. But like the way that like the kid is filling a gap in her life in a way, she's sort of filling a gap in his life, but she's also filling a gap in Paul Giamatti's life, but like not in the way that you would expect. Like they just they help each other, they get along as this unit, but they're also all individually dealing with their own things. So they don't just become a new family, but that found family element is still there.
The found family thing has become so trite and cliche and annoying, and this isn't that at all. There is no easy solution, but it's those moments and gaps and silences where you see them clocking those dynamics.
Right, because...
and the similarities. But it's not like, I mean, in the movie, her son has died, and it's not like Angus becomes her new son.
No, right. It's not that clean.
It's that in some moments she can care for him because she knows how.
Right.
And in other moments that makes it all the worse that it's Christmas and her son isn't here.
Right. But it still helps him because he is missing a caring maternal figure in his life, but he still, it's not like he just gets a new mommy. Like that's not how it goes either. Because that's how it is in real life, right? You have people who serve certain roles at certain points in your life, but they don't actually take on those full identities, right? Because not everybody can just immediately become family.
And this movie takes place within almost a time vortex where you've stopped the flow of your life. It's 2 weeks. You're only ever going to see these 2 people in that whole time.
Yeah.
So they can be everything to you.
Right.
And you know that then it will move on and they'll have full lives after that.
Because it's never going to be that exact dynamic ever again because the kids will all come back for school, you know?
It almost feels like a bottle episode from a show.
Totally.
And we've always been fans of
Except we got like the full range of the entire series in 1 2-hour movie.
But I think part of the comparison with things like Good Will Hunting or Dead Poets Society or It's a Wonderful Life or Banshees of Inisherin is that it is out of the current moment.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a style of dialogue and characterization in all of those movies which are either set in or created in a time very different from 2023.
Sure.
That has a fuller expression of humanity. I think it's less sanitized, terrified, meek.
Yeah.
Like there's a rugged's the wrong word, but there's a messiness to human expression and desire and pain.
Yes, right. Yeah. You don't always express things in this perfect, beautifully constructed, thought out way that's, been laundered and cleaned up for everybody in society to like it and agree with it.
There's not that, like, it's not emotional intelligence, I think, the thing current movies are doing. I think it's probably the opposite of that, but it's that attempt, right, where everyone does the please and sorry and the apologizing and the qualifying before they offer
and
an
validation
opinion.
And all that.
It's that, right.
And that's not what's happening here. Part of it is the beauty of the writing and everything. And I also think it's because it's taking place in like 1970 or 1971. So it's like at a time when especially among men, expressing feelings and trying to forge relationships was really, really hard. And like, there wasn't like a clean template to work from. There was no like how to validate your partner's feelings. Like no one had that in 1970.
But also when you say, I mean, most of the reason I enjoy the humor in this movie is because there are a lot of punchlines that people are landing.
Sure.
But it's because they hate the person they're talking to.
It's a mean humor,
and that's what I love.
Yeah,
and because
that feels the most honest,
of course. And
that, like, there's nothing funnier than like somebody you hate. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and if that's the goal with the joke, then you're not trying to say something that they approve of.
Right. Yeah.
You're trying to hurt them.
Yeah.
And that means that the humor is so much more incisive.
Right.
But the movie does take the time to play with like, well, what's this guy going through? Right. That he's lashing out and calling the teeth, you know.
But it's interesting that it's like this was done. It does feel like it was written in 2023, and that it's like it's got that slight like modern sensibility of feeling a little bit bitter, trying to be a little bit subversive. Like I don't mean mainstream 2023. I mean more like just how people feel nowadays, right? Like we're trying to figure out what has gone wrong and grappling with the harsh realities of the world.
Oh yeah. I mean, the class commentary, the race commentary.
Yes. I mean, talking about how fucked up the boarding school system is in general. And definitely class and race commentary for sure.
Which is done so powerfully and without grinding the movie to a halt.
Right.
And like lecturing the audience. It is so much more powerful in the narrative, and the way it's done here.
And it beautifully, like, I don't want to say criticizes, but it calls attention to the difficulties of 60s and 70s style parenting, especially among the upper class, without it being like a lesson. And it also not necessarily saying that like 2020's parenting is so much better.
In the same way the punchlines are just knockouts that you don't even see coming, and then you're just cackling again.
Yeah.
The commentary is damning and powerful, but it isn't that like low level just talking at the audience.
It's not
in the narrative, and it just nails you with an uppercut. I just think it's a beautifully constructed movie, but it avoids all of the pitfalls. And I just think it's interesting. This is a trend lately of movies that avoid the modern pitfalls of storytelling that are set in very different times.
Yeah,
I think it's an interesting way to just play a different game.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it would be hard to do it set in our current time, because you can't ignore the way that society reacts to things now.
If this was made by lesser artists and set in the modern age, the commentary would be much more clumsy.
Yeah.
The emotional intelligence stuff would be much more annoying. The humor would be terrible.
Also, there would be cell phones, which would actually kind of ruin the plot of the whole movie.
But can't you see the bad version of this movie?
Totally. Yes. But this movie was so good. And it was so great, too, because we saw the trailers. We were like, well, that looks like it'll be fun. We had no idea it was going to, at least I had no idea it was going to absolutely blow me away the way that movie did.
Yeah, I think I'm stumbling around trying to identify the timeless part of this movie.
Sure.
Because it's like not a 70s movie.
Yeah, it's like, but it is like the setting is so clearly 70s, you know. The aesthetic is so like, this is 1970. But yeah, it doesn't feel like a 70s movie either, because I think because of the themes it's playing with and the humanity of it, that feels so timeless. Like not necessarily like a boarding school in New England, but more like, and like the rich parents sucking, but more like needing human connection, feeling sad during the holidays because of regrets in your life, or something that's missing in your life, or someone's mistreating you, or loss, grief, found family, finding confidence in yourself, standing up for yourself, doing the thing you always said you were going to do. Like that's all there, and those are all timeless things.
But the setting, the pacing, the humor, I just think this one really stands out, and I'm happy to add this to our collection of holiday classics.
It feels really rewatchable too.
Yes.
Like, because there's some movies I see that are fantastic that I'm like, good if I see it once, maybe twice. But this one I want to like rewatch every year.
That's the other thing that I think is more retro, is the pacing of jokes.
Okay.
because it is so dense
Yeah.
and rapid fire, because it has that muscle and strength in the script that it doesn't need 30 seconds to build up to a funny line and then they pause like there's a laugh track, but there isn't a laugh track.
Did you get it?
Like there are going to be jokes I didn't catch the first time.
Of course. Yes, I see what you're saying.
And resonances in the dramatic plot.
Which is how like National Lampoon is.
Yeah.
Like you get funny stuff every time. It's like
Or Family Stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those. I think it's the best holiday anything I've seen in a long time.
It's pretty fantastic. And this is, y'all should know, this is coming from Cam, who does not like the holidays.
No.
I mean, you're softening up a little bit in your old age, at the old age of 29. But Cam's not a big Christmas guy, so this is like a big deal.
Especially Christmas movies.
Yeah, you don't like what Christmas movies do you like? It's like those two that you mentioned.
Those two, Man Who Invented Christmas, the Dan Stevens Dickens thing, that one's a lot of fun.
And you like It's a Wonderful Life, as everybody does and should. But
so 4.
Right.
Now 5.
No, don't forget A Christmas Prince, which we covered last year.
Go check that out. That was fun. We were both sick, I think.
We were. I was really sick. But anyway, yeah. Is it still in theaters, Cam?
Yes, it is. It came out a week or 2 ago.
Okay, we saw it like when it came out, and it's like limited release. But anyway, yeah, go see it. It's fantastic.
See it with your family if you can.
Truly, that's a good like family-friendly movie. I mean, there's swear words and so it's for adults, but still. It's one that you won't like hate going to see it with your parents. Do you know what I mean? So it's good. It's a good one.
A delight.
A delight.
All right. So we just wanted to do this like with Banshees. It's one of those where we wanted to talk about it, but also we really just wanted to, I don't know, do free publicity, get the word out, support great art. That's why we're doing this.
Yes.
Go see The Holdovers. Check it out. Support it. You will revel in Paul Giamatti. It's a career best performance.
He's so good.
And we'll be back on Friday with a brand new episode. Thank you for joining us. If you want more episodes, over on Patreon, $2 a month, you can support the show and get a year and a half of our back catalog of bonus episodes and new bonus episodes every month. This month, we actually have 2.
Yeah, November is a special
And
month.
in each episode, we're covering 7 amazing works of art. It's a big new round-robin type format for the show. It's 2 hours of bonus content of all of our analysis type discussions. Lots of fun stuff going on. We'll be back on Friday with a brand new episode. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Happy holidays. Bye.